Tonight, Syria dealing with another militant group as ISIS fighters hit towns along the Iraqi border. Members of al-Qaeda are now fighting along the Israeli border. Now, UN troops are getting involved trying to stop some of the violence. Over the weekend, those forces rescued a group of Filipino peacemakers that were trapped by the militant fighters, but others are still being held hostage. With that in mind, tonight Britain's trying to make sure that its citizens choosing to fight for ISIS don't come back to the UK when they're done. Fox News reporter Doug McElway shows us what the Brits are doing to keep those militants in check.
With several hundred British nationals of Muslim descent now fighting for ISIS, Prime Minister David Cameron today introduced several bills to protect his country from the spreading threat. One would stop suspected radicalized citizens from ever leaving his country.
Mr. Speaker, passports are not an automatic right. The Home Secretary already has the discretion to issue, revoke and refuse passports under the royal prerogative if there is reason to believe that people are planning to take part in terrorist-related activity.
Another bill would allow British police to temporarily seize passports of suspicious returning travelers. In anticipation of court challenges, he introduced a bill that allows Parliament, not the courts, to determine whether it's right to have that power. Cameron's aggressive defense stands in stark contrast to the U.S., where at least 100 U.S. citizens are also believed to be fighting for ISIS. Border defense is one arrow in the quiver, but not enough, critics say, given the religious fervor of the ISIS threat.
There is not a single example of one of these insurrections in 2,000 years being put down without massive bloodshed, without killing the fanatics. There's no examples of negotiations, concessions, or just waiting them out. You've got to kill them.
But it is not religious fervor that is drawing radicalized European and American Muslim youth to ISIS, says conservative member of the European Parliament Daniel Hannan.
They are young men who are narcissistic, violent, often with a history of petty crime, often unsuccessful with girls. But the one thing they're not, if you look at their lives, is pious.
Thus far, President Obama has resisted pressure from critics to strike at ISIS strongholds in Syria. But pressure is growing. King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia warning in advance of tomorrow's NATO summit in Wales, quote, "I am certain that after a month they will reach Europe, and after another month, America." Daniel Hannan doubts that Europe will offer much help if asked.
I don't think there is any support for another armed invasion.
But it is just that overwhelming force by air and land that could put ISIS out of the fight, the kind of force that the West appears reluctant to provide. In Washington, Doug McElway, Fox News.